Hello and welcome back to another video. In today's video we are gonna take care of this body. We have a lot of work to do on it, so hopefully this intro won't be too long. What we're gonna do is we're gonna fill some cracks and fill in some dings, and we have a place where we have to rebuild the finish completely because it's fallen off. We are also gonna plug up these 6 holes right here, and then when we go to install the bridge we are gonna re-drill them because I've done some measurements and I've checked some things, and if I move the bridge back about 2 mil, I will have more space to move the saddles when we go to intonate the guitar. And so I just feel like it's worth doing. It also lets me show you how to do that whole thing correctly, which you might know from another video where I said that, you know, there's a lot of information out there, people who are sharing things that are not completely true, and they're saying that you can just, you know, cut down the springs on your trem, or you can file down the screws or something to make things work so that you have more space to push them back. But that's not the right way to do things. That's not correct at all. Obviously, if you can't move the whole bridge back and re-drill because you've moved it as back as possible, because we do have this cavity here and you don't feel like routing out it in the back more, then obviously some of those things might be something you have to do as well, but it shouldn't be the first thing you go to, and it shouldn't be really seen as a solution because you're making the guitar worse than it actually is or should be. We are going to do things the right way, and I'm going to show you how to do it. So let's jump in to taking care of this guitar. It looks pretty nice from afar, but if you look real close, maybe you can see that there are some dings and scratches, like right there. And in this corner right here, it's been completely smashed. What I've done is I've put down a little bit of black paint and I've filled it in with super glue. And I did that before because I had to do it as quickly as I could, because I didn't want this to peel off and get bigger and bigger, so I had to just stop the whole peeling process. But all I did was I put down a little bit of super glue, filled in the wood with super glue, so that when I go to put on more glue now and build this area up again, we don't have any issues with things going into the wood because I've already filled the pores. And also to make sure that things don't peel off. If you have lacquer that is peeling off, you have to stop that process. And when it comes to a poly finish like this guitar, you can just glue the pieces back down with super glue so that they are attached, and then you can fill in all the little dings and cracks and things like that. But anyway, let's jump into it now, and yeah, we'll take a closer look at things. Here we have our little holes for our bridge, and first I'm just going to put down a little bit of wood glue. I'm just going to take a matchstick and put it in and break it off, put it in, move it around, break it off, something like that. And the wood glue is just to help glue them in place. We can obviously fill these up with anything, epoxy or whatever, it doesn't really matter. We are not going to use these holes. We're going to just try to make them disappear. We'll leave that to dry for a bit and we'll move on to over here. First off, I had to press everything down with masking tape so that everything would get attached correctly. So I have to just scrape away some of the masking tape. I wanted obviously to glue everything down, but I also wanted to glue everything down in its right place and as close as possible, because it looks a little bit worse than it is. I mean, it is still pretty bad, but I'm gonna take and paint this. I have a little bit of black acrylic paint right here, and I'm just gonna dabbing it on like that, working it in every crevice like so, and then I'm just gonna take and wipe most of it off because now it's filled all the little dings and mishaps, and just try to clean up the area to the best of ability, something like that. And now here I have some 2-comb epoxy. So basically it's 2 combinations, and we're just going to press out a little bit because we won't need that much. And you have 2 tubes, an A and a B. You try to press out equal part, something like that. It won't dry until you mix it together, basically. We're going to mix this together and we're going to try to not introduce any bubbles to it, but it's kind of hard, so try to not mix it and steer it around. That was very clumsily said, but yeah, try to just not introduce bubbles. And I have already messed it up and introduced bubbles because I can see them now. We're fixing it. And then just put it down here into the finish, cover it all up, and we'll try to smear it around and fill up the gaps. This you can probably maybe see, it goes all the way over here, crack. So we're just gonna put this on here, and after it's dried, which is 5 minutes, we'll be back and take a look at that. Here we have a tiny little ding, and here we have a tiny little ding. So let's work on those two real quickly, but we're gonna have to go through the entire body. So here we have super glue. You just find the little imperfections that you want to work on, like right here, and we just press out one dab like that, and that's more than enough. It's probably even too much. Same thing here, just a dab, and I'm just gonna quickly go through here, feel the area, put a dab here, hope that that goes in there, and we'll just leave that for now, and I'll be back real soon. Here, which it's super hard to film and it's super hard to see, but right there we have a little bit of a piece of super glue, and we can just level it out with a razor blade. Just scrape, 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 and you just do that until you can't feel it anymore, and it should really go quickly and not be a big thing at all. Quickly go over it with a razor blade, just soft little pads. You don't have to press or be forceful or anything, just tiny little soft movements. Flip this over and we can take a look here. I don't think we have that many dings in the top, but we have one big here, and so we have to do the same thing we just did. The drop in, we smudge it around a little bit like so, and then we just wait for that to dry. It might be hard to see, I hope you can see, but there's like white lines in the finish right here. And that's, you know, it's been scuffed up against something and it's been damaged. Usually you'll notice these things with polyfinish, that if you get scratches or dings, you get a little bit of whiteness. And so what we can do is just level out tiny little scrapes very softly around these areas and just smooth that out. And then if you have that, it might look worse now, but if you sand this with wet and dry sandpaper and you go up to maybe 1200 or 2000, that's gonna disappear. We're gonna fill everything in that we need to fill in, and then we're gonna talk about the sanding parts. And right here, now that I've leveled this, I can feel that some of the dings and scratches, they are not disappearing because they are too deep into the finish. And so we're gonna have to put down a little bit of super glue and just fill up those areas. Now sometimes, all depending on what sort of mood I'm in, I will fill these holes up and I'll put some color in and I'll basically make them disappear like they never existed. But sometimes I'm like, nah, I want the guitar to have the holes even though I'm never gonna use them. And it's just because I feel it looks right to have the holes. And I'm thinking that this is one of those guitars. So I'm gonna just put down, this is lacquer stain, and I'm just gonna fill these holes up with it, and we'll wipe away the excesses. And this will just make the wood on the inside black as well. And the same thing goes with this right here. They just drill a hole straight through, and they don't really care if it looks good or not. And the same thing goes for this thing. This is also something that I don't know if anyone else would care to do it, but I do. I usually do it. Usually you will have a burr on this edge right here because how they route everything out. And on inexpensive guitars, they never sharpen their bits. So I'm just gonna hit it like this. I know this is one of those things that you could say doesn't matter, but I just hate seeing it, you know? And just cleaning it up when you're not gonna have the plate on. To me, it means so much. Like, I don't know if you can see it, but now I'm back and I've just filled it with a little bit of paint and super glue, and I've gone over the edges so they're smooth and nice. But these holes, like they're there and you can probably see them, but they're also like not taking up focus. Okay, so I've started to level out this area that we just fixed up, and as you can probably tell right here, I have some of the clear coat without the lacquer, and it just looks kind of like a disaster. So we're gonna have to refill this area. So we have to sand it and scuff it up. And I'm using 400 grit sandpaper. I've cut a little strip like this, and I'm just sanding back the finish. Just gonna try to get this to be as smooth as possible. 400 grit will take off a lot, but it will not make huge marks in the finish that we can't fix. But you can see how I'm burning through on multiple places now, and that's just, you know, sadly a part of it. Now we have sort of evened it out a little bit, and I'll just go over it with a scraper and get rid of some of the unevenness, leveling out this entire area. If we level out this entire area, we've basically created like an entire new surface here. Now we have an edge again that is at least somewhat the same as before. So something like that. Don't let the matteness of the area fool you. The edge has been reconstructed. Okay, so I was hoping not to have to do this, but that's the way it is sometimes. Here we have a little bit of black spray paint, and we're just going to spray this area here. There you have it. And now, obviously, we'll leave it to dry now and all of that, but hopefully you can see that it's basically gone and everything looks the way it's supposed to. So let's start off by smearing in just a little bit of black, and then we just remove the excess. We don't need paint everywhere, so something like that. And then we just take our super glue and we flood these marks and just let the super glue sink in and fill everything up. And if you get bubbles, just pop them because we don't want them. And then I'm just gonna leave this to sink in. It goes fairly quickly, like this one has already sunken in, and it might sink in a lot, but just give it a couple of goes. I'm just gonna come back and refill them and do that a couple of times. Okay, so I'm back now, and you can almost not see the holes at all. Obviously this needs to be leveled and things like that, but we're not really there yet. But the holes are basically gone. You might think that I'm suggesting that you have to get this perfect and, you know, seamless and just erase the trace of any holes ever existing, and that's not what I'm trying to get across. I just kind of want it as neatly as I possibly can get it, so that when I do go to drilling new holes, it looks pretty nice and it looks pretty good. And the thing is, everything here is gonna get sanded and evened out and buffed and everything. But even if you can still see them a little bit, it won't matter, because the bridge, and I'm not going to put it in completely, but if I hold it here, maybe you can understand that how, like, I'm just moving it back a little bit, and the pickguard and everything is kind of go on and cover all those things up anyway, so you really don't need to spend like hours trying to get this to be perfect. Do your best job, but keep it, you know, reasonable, and do it to the best of your ability. Obviously, always do your best, but also be reasonable, is what I'm trying to say. Okay, so if we look at the body right now, we have some flat areas where it's dull, and that's because we've scraped it with a razor blade. And we have this area here which looks a little bit weird maybe. I ran into an issue with this body that if you have a Squire or a Harley Benton or something, you're not going to run into that problem, at least not the same way. But this guitar actually has a really thin coating. The black paint is really thin, and then the clear coat over it is also really thin. I've already burned through the finish multiple times and had to fix my own little burn throughs. Yeah, we're gonna have problems, is what I'm trying to say. But anyway, what you need is sandpaper. I'm starting off with 12. You could most likely start off with like 800 if you have a thicker clear coating. You need water as well, because we're using wet and dry sandpaper, and that uses water as a sort of vacuum thing to press the paper into place, so you will get a nicer contact, which is something you don't hear people explain why they're using different kinds of paper. But this is not the same as regular sandpaper. This is wet and dry. So if you're going to do something with this where you're working on lacquer, you should use wet and dry sandpaper. And they usually come in higher grids. Usually they start off at somewhere around 400 and work their way up to like 8,000. We're not going to go to 8,000 on this guitar. If you have a guitar that you really love and that is expensive, like really expensive, you might want to do something like that and go to like super high grid, super fancy sandpaper. But anyway, you're also going to need a towel to wipe everything off. I'm just going to start doing this now and just put my towel down here in my lap and try to work and be effective and get this over with fairly quickly. There is benefit to sanding the entire body the way I'm going to do now, and that is everything will be even. Everything will be at the same level. It can be challenging to get the gloss back to super high gloss on a spot leveling work that you've done if you have something that has a really nice high gloss and you've fixed it. And so for me, it's going to benefit me to sand everything. But I understand some of you might not want to do that because that's more work. And if you have a really expensive, nice guitar, you might not want to have to sand and buff the entire body. That's overkill, but it can be a challenge. And you'll have to put more elbow grease and use power tools maybe even to buff up the area afterwards. And we're going to go into buffing after this, but I'm just putting that out there, that if you're doing similar work that I'm doing here, where you're taking something that is sort of inexpensive and you're gonna rebuff the areas, you might want to consider maybe rebuffing the entire body, just because then you'll have to work from where you are. If this body doesn't get as glossy as it is now after the sanding, it doesn't really matter, because I can decide whatever sort of level of gloss I want, because it's going to be all over the body and it's going to be even and the same. But if I only spot level places, then I have to work that up to the same gloss as the areas around, because otherwise you'll basically just have different levels of this matteness, which doesn't look super nice. So I just have the guitar body here and I have my paper here, and I'm just going to put some lukewarm water on the body and my sandpaper. I'm just going to start working it. I have some scratches here that I really want to get out. And so I'm going to have to go through the entire body, and paper is getting like sucked onto the body, which is perfect, because that's the kind of thing you want for the ultimate sanding. But it is a little bit hard because you can basically lose the grip of the sand. And now those seems to be gone, so I'm just going to go through this. I'm going to speed up the video now, but just realize, you know, that this is the sort of pace I'm going in. And I'm going to apply some water to the area, and I'm going to sand. Okay, so here's the guitar body right now, and hopefully you can see that it's at least almost matte everywhere. You can see here how easily I burned through the finish. The same thing here, I burned through the finish here a little bit again. And I had this area here where I completely like remade the entire thing, and it looks pretty good, like, but you can also see maybe there's a little bit of marks here and up here where I've sanded through it. And I was gonna pull out all the stops and just buff this up and make it super glossy, but this is what I think will happen. And if you want to, we can do some sort of follow-up video to see if I'm right, but this is what I think is gonna happen. I'm gonna play this guitar for 2 or 3 months, and because I'm kind of reckless, so I'm thinking 2 months after I've made this guitar, or 3 months after, I'm pretty sure that I'm gonna wear through the finish like immediately. I'm gonna hand buff it, is what I'm trying to say. And if you guys want to, I can make a follow-up video like at some point, and we tell you like, oh, I've played the guitar for this and this amount. I'll just show you how much wear it's gotten. Because one thing that a lot of people who don't like relic guitars like to talk about is like earning it and playing the guitar so much that it gets worn. But they never talk about like what kind of finish and what kind of conditions are the guitar in. You know, like for example, some people seem to glorify the whole playing in smoky bars, but it's like there are no smoky bars. And also, like, risking your health doesn't make you a better guitarist. Like, all those things are so stupid. Anyway, sorry, I'm getting sidetracked again a little bit. My point is, if you have a really, really, really thin clear coat on a really, really thin paint job, you're gonna wear through that quicker than if you have a mil-thick clear coat. My point is, it's not worth it, basically. Like, standing there with a machine and trying to get this up to a high gloss and spending 40 minutes buffing this like crazy, going through all the different steps, is not worth it. So I'm gonna hand buff this now. I'm gonna show you how horrible it is to hand buff, because ooh, you need a rag. You can use an old t-shirt, or you can use a old towel or something, or you can buy special cloth for polishing your car, which is what I have here. It might look like regular tissue paper, but it has a finer texture to it, and it doesn't really fray the same way that paper does. It might be hard to tell, but you feel it when you feel it. And you just find that in your like automotive car shop thing, yeah, or in your grocery store if they have a section for like nifty things you need to have for your car or something like that. I'm gonna film just buffing the front, I think, because I don't think we need to do more. And then we just put down, and I need to get some more of this because it's farting it out, and we just smear it around and just try to get it across this entire area. And you probably should use something else than your fingers because you get dirty. It would be fun if any one of you want to, or some of you would like to, write a comment guessing a date, like 2 months or 3 months or 5 months, and then like, oh, it's gonna be this much relic or this much relic. And I promise I won't go in and fake relic it, or whatever you want to call it. You leave this on for a bit, which we obviously have done now because I've been rambling. Then you take your paper or your tissues or your cloth, whatever you're going to use. An old t-shirt will work great for this. So if you have an old t-shirt that you're like, no, I want to use it for something useful. And I usually like to stand up and do this so I can lean on it and use all my body weight on it, because you need to like go ham, and you need to just press as hard as you can and just buff it up like this, and press as hard as you can and go as fast as you can so that you really get in there and really. And if you have just a spot, then it's a little bit harder to maybe, but it's also easier because you won't have to do this for very long. And then it's done when it feels clogged, and you take the next one and you just yeah, you feel it immediately. You get tired after 12 seconds. You just want to press it down, and it might be hard both for me to explain but also for you to understand, but I'm putting everything I basically have into this. I'm just pressing down like like to the point where it's hurting, you know, so just and you just need to first get as much of it done, I mean off, just polish it off, and then the real work begins when you're like, I mean, like you can see there, I fixed that. That's where I fixed it. So it's actually thicker there with finish, and we're already through it. So like this guitar, which I don't even remember the name of it, was something like Rocktail or something. You can see it in the beginning of the first video, I think. That one was just I don't have to go overboard right here because that's just try to create some friction and heat. So press down as hard as you can, and really, and if you feel like it's getting a little milky in the finish, you just need to go faster and harder. So if you have like a really buff friend who's really strong and who wouldn't mind helping you, maybe you can put him to work, like something like that. Whew. I'm gonna have to go back and do this a little bit more, but hopefully you can see that it's somewhat glossy. I don't know if you can see any real reflections, but yeah, there it is. And here's the back, and yeah. Whew, I'm gonna take a break. Okay, so here's the body now, and it might be hard to see. It's also a little bit dusty. I need to clean. but it has a little bit of gloss to it. Not over dramatic. It's not as glossy as it was before, but it's okay. I had to compromise a little bit because, yeah, I am thinking that maybe when I go to like upgrade the guitar or something like that, I don't know, I'll probably just repaint the guitar. To be honest, it has a very, very thin finish. I'm like, even here where it's supposed to be, you can still see those. But all the techniques and everything that I went through in this video are still valid. I understand if some of you might be like, nah, if it doesn't work for you, why would it work for me? But I didn't think this guitar had such a thin finish. It didn't look to be like, it's so thin, basically, is what I'm trying to say. I thought it was less dramatic when I started, but then when I scraped, I just realized like, oh my god, I'm down to bare wood really quickly. Now, I'm not really sure what kind of wood this is. Most likely it's basswood or something like that. But maybe that means that this is a great mod guitar for all you weird people who care about how thick your finish is. I shouldn't say that you're weird, but you are. And you know it. I'm actually considering, if you guys are interested in it, to do some sort of follow-up where I'm like just showing what the guitar looks like 2 months later, which by the time this video comes out, because I'm making all the videos that is this guitar, I'm making them all in a row, and then I'm just spacing them out a little bit, but it won't be 2 months from after this video comes out. It will be 2 months after I'm finished with this guitar, which is a little bit earlier than you might think, because obviously this is pre-recording and not live. I hope you realize you're not watching a live video, which it might seem like because I don't edit. Anyway, I'm rambling, and I'm sorry. I'm really trying to make these videos shorter. I can't stop myself, and yeah, I'm sorry. Anyway, that's the end of this video. Obviously, depending on what sort of way you wanna buff the guitar will affect it. And if you go with other buffing methods, there are a couple of things you should think about. Like, for example, if you buff with a big wheel, then you have to brace yourself so that the edge doesn't catch the wheel and throw the guitars out of your hand. And if you use a drill with a wheel, basically something round, let's pretend it's this, then you have to move in circles like this. Don't just stand still on something, because then you create like lines. It will look almost like waves. So you have to always be moving. And if you're buffing by hand, then you will know how tired I am now that I'm trying not to show you. The same thing goes with if you have one of those buffing machines. It's like a thing with 2 handles on each side and a big wheel. If you're going to use that, you need to clamp the body down really good, make some sort of neck holder jig thing for it, or something that can really hold it in place, and be like onto a table, workbench, something, you know, sturdy, because you can easily lose the grip of everything, and those machines are supposed to hold with 2 hands. Last thing I just want to say is it's about creating heat. Obviously not so much heat that you melt things, but it should get warm. Like you see me press my hand into it and rub like crazy, and that's because I'm basically pressing the finish into the guitar. You can think of it like that, and I'm trying to create heat and pressure and just grind it in, basically. So regardless of what method you use, there is an element of elbow grease and really forcing yourself. So even if you use a machine for doing these things, you're going to be tired and exhausted afterward and want to go take a nap. So that's what I'm going to do. You are going to stay awesome and cool and go and buff a guitar, and I'm going to go to bed. It's dark outside, but it's not that late, but I'm tired. So yeah, that's it. That's the end of this video. I'll be back real soon with another one. Bye!